Hello and welcome to section 5, Improving Speech Emotion Detection using TensorFlow Learning. And in this video we'll create a new model based on a pre-trained convolutional neural network model that we've used in previous section. But before we get started, first a little disclaimer. So as you probably noticed, I haven't actually gone into the details about the theory and practice behind machine learning. So in this section, we'll be focusing on the actual tools and how to use it, and not on the theory and practice of training, testing, and validating the actual models. So feel free to check out the additional links that I provide for you if you don't know the basics of working with models, and specifically about training, testing, and validating models. I will mention some of the stuff, but if you're not familiar with that, with the basics of machine learning, practical basics of machine learning, it will be difficult for you to actually follow. If you don't have the basics covered, I've put some very useful links for you at the last video when we have the section summary. So let's have a look at the code behind TensorFlow Learning. The idea behind it is that, let's say that you have a model that has been trained and has been optimized and have really nice performance. So let's say that you have 70% of accuracy on detecting emotions in audio samples, right? So it's pretty good. And you're testing your model, you're trying it with different audio samples, with your own voice, or maybe with someone else's voice, and you discover that there are some use cases when you would really benefit from training it with a slightly different kind of audio samples, right? And TensorFlow Learning is a very interesting idea that will allow you to do those subtle tweaks on the model that is already working really well, but you can use some additional data, cover some of the use cases that this well-optimized model don't cover, right? The idea behind TensorFlow Learning is to simply use the model that has been optimized, works really well, and use it to actually tweak it with a little bit of data that might be useful. And then you have this model that will be able to still perform really well and also to cover those use cases that you are interested in. So this is the main idea, the general idea behind TensorFlow Learning. And we can do that in TensorFlow.js. And we starting with just loading our model, and we've already done that in previous sections. So let's have a look at script.js and get model function. So here our first line is basically just loading the model. This is the exact same model. And what we are doing with this model is that we want to extract one of the last convolution layers. So if you're not familiar with convolutional neural networks, and they have a bunch of layers, and the data that you are using for training is basically going through those layers. And each of those layers, there are different types of layers. They will extract different kind of features from this data, right? Different patterns. And the layers that you can find near the end of this network are basically, they have the most high-level information about the data, right? So those kind of information that we are really interested in, very close to the actual output that we want to get from a model. So for example, in our case, we have emotion detection, right? So one of those last layers, they have those patterns that will describe the emotion in audio samples in a pretty interesting and good way, right? So we can extract this information, get this information from this layer, and basically just train it, or just use this information and just tweak it a little bit with our audio samples. So this is the idea behind that. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to find the layer that we are interested in. And when it comes to convolutional neural networks, we are interested in convolutional layers. So we can do that in see what kind of layers do we have a model in a pre-trained model, just by looking at pre-trained .layers in our case. So this is actually the layers attribute for our model. So There you will see a list of layers that are available with names, with the attribute name that you can use to actually, in the next line, just get this layer, right? And in our case, with our model, we have conf1d underscore conf1d6. This is the name of our layer that we are most interested in. And this is pretty much the last layer that we can see in our model. And in the next section, we'll go through the actual architecture of this model. But right now, just keep in mind that we are using the last convolution layer in this model.